BRIESE is here. He's from Central Ag Consulting. He's a certified professional crop consultant, also certified crop advisor. He's got a couple of degrees from ND-SWCS. We're gonna kind of transition a little bit from sort of a broad-based soil health look, and we're going to kind of focus in on one particular topic. And Lee is going to be talking about soil salinity and what you should know. So, Lee. Over to you.
Oh, it's not that big a deal. Yours is way cooler than mine. I got to ask you somehow how you do those awesome slides. When the gasp in the room is audible when you zoom in on that first video, it's like, wow. I'm drooling over that. We're going to go from incredibly high tech to incredibly low tech. These are my signature things, I guess, that I carry with me. These tools get way more use in my talks than they ever do anywhere else. So we'll see how this goes. You might have to remind me to keep the microphone up. I'm really pretty wild. So, all right. I was asked to talk about soil salinity. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to probably go off the chain a little bit later on. Basically, as far as I'm concerned, soil salinity is a very simple scientific problem. It's pretty clear cut, straightforward. Salt accumulation at the surface of the soil. Okay, that's not real hard. The salts are naturally in the soil, they're part of it. They dissolve in the water, they move with the water. Wherever the water evaporates, it leaves the salt behind. Wow, okay, that's not, okay. Pretty simple. You see a lot of this. This nice white looking soil here. You can actually see in this picture, it's actually blowing. The salt is moving to the neighborhood, so it can move that way also. And as far as I'm concerned, there's only one way to manage this, and this is with water management. That's it. Water is the medium that carries the salts. The salts are already there. They don't really change and transform into other things because they're basic elemental types of ions. So we have lowering the water table and intercepting the water before it reaches the surface. And as far as I'm concerned, there's really a couple of ways to do that. A pipe and a plant. And so really what I'm getting at is this seems to be a very straightforward, a very simple situation. But when you come into management, there's a lot of different considerations and ways to do this. So then I have my management tools, and of course I showed you my sledgehammer, and that's really the tile drainage. It's the big way to change it. If you're going to do it, you better be sure you don't undo things after you pull this out. Okay? It's pretty serious. It tends to be pretty expensive. I don't fix my watch with this. Okay? This is not the type of thing that you take lightly, and it has repercussions when you're using it. So I do think, though, it's highly effective. It changes the relief portion of the caloric. Is the soil forming factors, we're changing the relief. As soon as we put a pipe under there, we change the hydrology. Now we no longer have that depression really holding a lot of water. Surface drainage, I think, is a claw hammer. It's a smaller thing. You're not using quite as aggressive deal, but you're going to change the relief some. Crop selection, I think, is a very specific thing, and I have my calipers in my bucket. If you really want me to dig them out, I'm a little tight with the suit today. Thanksgiving's already coming, and I guess I got a head start on that one. Anyway, what I'm getting at with the calipers is very specific. It has very specific uses, and they have very specific fits, and crops have ranges where they work well in. Soybeans do not have a real good salinity tolerance rating. It's a little bit better than dry beans, and within soybeans there's micro differences between varieties, but generally they suck. My technical term for that. And when you get into barley and sunflowers, they're better, okay? But they're still not going to tolerate real high salinities. And we get into things like kochia and foxtail barley, they're head and shoulders above all of our crops. They tolerate salinity, okay? So you have to know what those numbers are going to be. And the cover crops is kind of the do-all, be-all, the pliers that every farmer carries on the side. It's just, you got to have it. It's a useful tool, but it's not really good at anything. Okay? Don't get me wrong there. It's a critical soil health building thing. But it's just not great at anything, and it doesn't really fit every job. You start talking to farmers about cover crops, you're like, well, how do I use this? What if it doesn't rain? I got all this expense, and I don't have cattle, and It's the pliers. It works, kinda. Okay? And then we get into things like perennial crops. I just had to use something. I couldn't think of a better tool. Okay? And then that's that whole take it out of production. And that's kind of my bucket where we're just going to try to store the salts in that spot. We're not really going to move them, change them, or change the hydrology. We're just going to try to keep them from going out in the rest of the field. So, crop selection can work. It can be a useful tool. This is a place that we're not going to do tile drainage on. It's a field that I've been working on for a number of years. And right over here, he had long-term salinity issues. There's ditch effect here, there's sloughs in here. This soil is basically Hammerly Tonka, so it tends to be pretty wet anyway. And this is what his fields would look like. Lots of white spots, lots of non-productive areas, and everything in here was just low productivity. And in that spot, that general 40-acre area here, in 2011, it was 2.4 decisiemens per meter on a 1-to-1, which is pretty hot. Soybeans are going to die. They do very effectively and very quickly, actually. Corn is pretty short. It looks nice for a little while. It looks like it's growing. You get in there, there's no ears on it. Even the barley that we put in here, over time, was not the typical yield that a producer's looking at. He's averaging about 32 bushel barley there. The producer doesn't really like that number in that sense. But really, if you look at the crop growth from here to here, and this is after the harvest, so this is residue. We did not have crop growth right around those spots. We had some poor growth in here. But other than that, we had biological plant activity. We had water usage by a plant, which is helping to change our salinity. Still not a good number, and these things are going to bounce around. This is, after a certain rainfall event, and year to year, it's not going to be a real good number, but it's giving us an indication that at least I'm decreasing this through this practice. So it can work. But if you look at the shape of that field, it's not typically a farmer-friendly field shape. They like square equipment, they like big quarters, they like straight drives. It's efficient. But honestly, folks, these sloughs are not efficient either. These are, you put a headland on them, you turn around them, you double fertilize them, you double spray them, you double seed them, you double your inputs on all those turns. And even with our high technology, we can reduce some of that, but we still have some of that doubling. So this isn't just a -1 input. This is a -1.75 cost of input. And when you harvest 0 soybeans off of this, your profit for that year is negative whatever it cost you to put it in and manage that soil. And so what we got into this with this barley, and this we did 2 years of barley in a row. And we did cover crops, and unfortunately had dry falls, so the cover crops didn't grow, or grow very marginally. Okay? So we got an average of 30 bushel barley in here. We're not putting fertilizer on this. This is not a soil that's going to produce 100 bushel barley. It's just not there. Okay? I was never going to be a professional basketball player. Okay? I'm not built for that. It's not in my genetics. It's not in my history. It's not in my parent material to be a professional basketball player. This is not 100 bushel barley stuff. This is also not 175 bushel corn. And it's probably not even soybean ground and probably never should have been. Even though soybeans look the best financially right now, if they don't grow, they don't turn out very good. And what we did here is, this was corn this year. You can see we still have issues up in this area. It's just one of those things that was a little harder to deal with. Planted barley here, and soybeans on the rest of it. What this is doing for him is it's taking all those zeros out of his soybean production and his corn production. And his average yields in these fields are increasing dramatically. You start pulling some of those zeros out, you go from a 28 bushel soybean average to a 42 bushel soybean average, or 150 bushel corn average. That has huge repercussions for his crop insurance, his proven yield, his guaranteed financial income. If you look at your paycheck and they decide, well, if it's going to rain, we'll give you a little more. This is his paycheck, so he's guaranteeing his paycheck, his base level. And in here, instead of negative whatever it cost us to put the crop in, he's actually getting malt quality barley out of here very often because we're not over-fertilizing nitrogen. It's under a great deal of stress, the protein tends not to be too high. So he's selling a lot of this for about $6. So 30 bushel barley times $6 is more than paying the inputs. It's not paying the going rate on land rent. It's not going to do that. Okay? But it's better than a zero. If you take 43 acres and you take them times the profit margin instead of times zero, you end up with a better end result. Here's the negatives. The farmers just shake their heads and go, there's no way I'm going to do that. Because it's not only just the 6 different spray dates, it's 6 different correct wind directions. As nowadays, you don't just use glyphosate. You have to have something in the tank, because glyphosate's going to fail tragically because we have a lot of resistance. So typically whatever you have in the tank to help control weeds in corn is going to kill soybeans and probably barley and vice versa all the way through this. And you see these nice little jogs and wonderful things here. Yeah, we had some pretty good drift right along this border here. There wasn't a whole lot of barley in there. But it was still some crop growth for a time. Not perfect, but a lot better than it had been. Pretty simple things, what not to do. Tillage makes salinity worse. It increases evaporation. Period. There's thousands of studies on this. Tillage is bad for irrigation. It's bad for water infiltration. It's bad for lots of different things as far as what Abby was talking about. But it looks better than white. Right? This is a challenge. This is a huge challenge. The other thing about this is what I'm asking my farmers to do is don't do tillage. With a producer, the don't do is much harder than do. Producers are doers in general. Okay? I was disappointed in one of my farmers. I thought I'd had him into total no-till. And I went to soil sample his fields this week. And I come back and 90% of his fields are worked. Chisel plow. He's been no-till for 4 years. Like, I call him, what are you doing? Why? Well, I got a new tractor I needed to play. That was his real answer. That I can't make that up. I got a new tractor I needed to play. And he worked 1,000 acres of soybean and corn. I have no answer for that. I got nothing. Okay? Don't plant susceptible crops. Talked about that. Don't add more salts. This is another one of those do things. What can I do to fix my soil? Stop screwing it up. Okay? They love this idea of adding things to it. Is there some type of surfactant? Is there some type of glue? Is there some type of... Now, in specific cases, I'm going to say that, you can work on your sodium with gypsum and lime, and there may be reasons to use these amendments, but it's not for the salinity. Okay? You're just adding more salts because that's what these are. All right, now I'm going to go off the chain a little bit here. I honestly think salinity is pretty much straightforward. Disagreements? Questions? I think if you don't understand that, I failed to explain it. So if you had questions on salinity, fine. I'm going to talk about a little bit different stuff. This is a question I get all the time from all kinds of different people. How do I get my farmer to try these solutions? You talk about barley, you talk about sunflowers, you talk about cover crops, you talk about no-till. I can't get them to do it. Whether it's, well, my dad just loves black dirt, he's got to go out and play with his tractor. That's a reasonable excuse, I guess. I don't know. It happens. I have some growers that I've convinced, and they go, why is the neighbor tilling everything? What is he doing? You go, I don't know. He goes, well, I wish he'd quit because it's blowing across, and it's washing across, and his weeds are coming my way, and it's driving me nuts. Same thing with anybody else who's interested in soil health. Now, here's something I think we fail on as scientists. Maybe it's just me, but I think we assume that good science will be adopted based only on its merit. That if we just present the facts and we show the data and the graphs and the statistical significance, that that's enough, and people are going to take it and run with it. I don't think that's true. Honestly, don't think that's true. Now, I think in some cases it works, it pertains. I think we as trained scientists, people who come to this meeting have a specific interest in this meeting, and they're trained in science, and we're trained in statistics, and we're trained in looking at data, and we're used to the presentations and how we present them. But I don't think that applies to everybody. Now, I am definitely not a psychologist. I took one class, okay? The following comments that I am going to make are based solely on my observations. I am trained in making observations. Use at your own discretion and your own will. Basically, if I'm wrong, you're on your own, okay? I don't want to talk about this. And then the other thing is that it's based on my clientele. So understand that these are people that have hired a crop consultant, and particularly they hired me. And people will say you can't figure out which way you get your razor inverted. You know, you're supposed to shave below the ears, not above the ears. Okay. I just take the path of least resistance. So that's why that is. But, so with that, I don't think there's any secret here. We have a culture in agriculture. There's a culture of the people. Tillage is part of that culture. Doing something is part of that culture. When they're not doing something, farmers feel guilty, especially if the neighbor's doing something. Okay? It's true. My neighbor's all working the fields and I got nothing to do. Should I go work them? No. Well, what am I supposed to do? Vacation. Something else. Okay? And there's a specific language or vernacular more, specific to this of agriculture. They talk about hairpinning. And there might be a few people here that don't really know what I'm talking about. And that's with the no-till drill where you're putting the disc in the ground and you're going across the residue, particularly wheat is kind of bad for this. You push the wheat in the ground without cutting it. And when you drop the seed in between two pieces of straw and it doesn't get seed to soil contact. It doesn't grow very well. There were some drills early on in no-till that were really bad at this. John Deere had some 1840s and 1860s that really were really good at hairpinning. Okay? So residue management was an issue. We didn't have the technology to successfully do no-till, and a lot of people reverted back to tillage. Well, my drill doesn't work, so no-till sucks. Can't get the seed to grow. Not that the drill needed to be fixed. And then other things, you talk about floaters, I'm just going to leave that one hanging. Okay? Farmers tend to be direct and get to the point. And this is one of the other things that I think, in science, we definitely want to know how you got there, what you did, how you observed it, did you replicate it, what is your statistics? Wow. Failed on that word. So the methodology is incredibly important in science. It's part of the whole reason we do it. Okay? Now, for the farmer, he's interested that you did a good job, typically. They want to get to the end result. And I think we do a lot of build-up and not a lot of result when it gets to farmers when we're talking to them. Okay? And it's one of the reasons I use my tool bucket. I'm trying to get something to stick. Some plan, something. Okay? And they tend to be bottom line oriented. Now, you would think, I give these talks, I talk about salinity with the school for it. My growers are exceptionally good at doing this, right? Well, they closely follow my herbicide, fertilizer, and seed recommendations. They did hire me specifically for those, so they watch them closely. We start talking about salinity management, about a third of my growers will actually change their practices or even try on a small number how to do this. I'm disappointed in that. And I was bouncing across those fields last week in 4 Lowlock, trying to sample that soil that was just destroyed. It had been so beautiful. Like, why? And after I talked to him, his new tractor, it sparked a, and this is where I'm going really off the chain, folks. I'm going out. But what I do see, and I did this just the other night, I started looking at my growers. I have 31 growers. I put them in different categories based on these here. And so we have the guys of the whatever works, brand loyalty. You'll see red tractors, blue tractors, green tractors, orange tractors, just whatever. Okay? It's a hodgepodge. And you'll probably see an old one here and there. Like, well, why do you have that tractor for like, it still works? Does its job? No. I don't need a new one. It's just fine. Okay? Then you have the next guy who are literally have John Deere underwear. Okay? Their mailbox is John Deere, every tractor is John Deere, everything's new, it's in the shop and it's clean. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I am noticing in this trend is that 3 out of the 8 guys that I categorize that way will be willing to try some of my salinity stuff. And understand, those are straightforward. I'm not talking about anything other than I already showed you. Okay? Just try it. But when we get into the guys that, well, whatever works, it's 7 out of 9 of those guys that are classified that will do that. Okay? So that doesn't explain everything. Then I kind of had a strategy category. So we have the, let's start about the category based. This is actually really common. I have 11 growers that are almost strictly category based. Cornfields are going to get this rate. Soybeans are going to get this rate. We're going to spray this on them. We're going to start on the east side of the farm. We're going to work it the way to the west because that's the way it's most efficient and it makes sense. And they buy all the same chemical. They buy a similar seed. You know, they just have a plant. This is where we're doing corn, this is where we're doing soybeans. It's irrespective of the field. And they plant those low areas where I put barley to soybeans every other year because that's rotation. And they just, I can't get a yield in there. Duh. Okay. Then we have some other guys that are more individual based. They will change their rotation based on the soil's performance or history. And the whole thing of planting barley there. I have a few guys that have really light soil. Okay, we tend to get moisture early and not late. That's North Dakota. That's where I live. And they tend to plant soybeans and corn on them. Well, those are late season crops that need moisture late. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay? So your 80 bushel corn yield and your 12 bushel soybean yield doesn't look very good. We turn that around, we plant wheat. Oh my God, the swear word, wheat. We can actually get 30, 40 bushel wheat, and I can get 40 bushel field peas. Okay? Problem with that is there's 2 more crops into their system. Most of these guys sold the drills that they plant those crops with. Okay? So it gets to be a logistical problem, but it can be done. And when they start doing that, they start making more profit on those acres. And instead of draining the other acres where they have to get 180 bushel corn and pay for it, the rest of the farm, those acres are holding their own. Okay? Again, 7 out of 9 of those guys, and these aren't not necessarily the same guys. It'd be much easier if it was, but it's not. Then, okay, I'm going on a limb here. Like I told you, my tools get more use in the bucket than anywhere else. I'm not really good at building things. Actually, I'm really terrible at building things. Okay? But I love problem solving. And I think one way to measure this on a farm is with whether or not this guy's to build his own stuff or he's kind of a repair-only guy. There's nothing wrong with either one. You're both, and understand that I don't think there's anything wrong with either one of these categories all the way through. But it just seems like when you start doing the numbers, 3 out of 10 guys that call the mechanic or the specialist and they only do the normal maintenance will listen to my salinity. And 4 out of the 5 guys who build anything out of their own, these are the guys that walk by the shop and go, you know, they make a pretty good cover crop spreader. We need to cut this, weld this, move that, put that here, mount it on the bracket over there. Okay. And they go do it. Right? The other guy's like, well, they don't make a piece of equipment for me to get out there and I can't get there. And, all right? So his mechanical creativity or what he was willing to do, maybe he's very creative, just not willing to do it. Right? Then we get into the no-till thing. And I thought I was in no-till country until the last couple of years. There's a lot of tillage. I'm really disappointed in this. Now when I mean vertical tillage, I'm not talking about the joker that has discs and spikes and tines. And I'm talking about a nice little super coulter, cuts the residue, minimal soil disturbance. Okay. They may go out and knock down those sprayer ruts, and I really say to you guys, you don't necessarily need to have them. This is another management thing. I know weather's a problem. You have to get some spraying done. Weed control is an issue, but I don't think you need to have big, nasty sprayer ruts, at least some of the ones that you can lose my pickup in. I don't think they need to be there. And then there's this whole thing with these no-till guys, and what I mean by make their planters sing. They can plant into anything. And this is kind of what the Hohenhaus brothers have showed us when they're out there. Like, wow, did you get this seed placement just awesome in this pasture? And I asked them, and they go, yeah. It was just an expectation. Okay? Anybody been to a kindergarten band concert? Right? Or an elementary band concert? You hear what I'm getting after, right? Same instrument in different hands sounds different. Okay? There's some people that can really make their planters sing. Okay? They can make it and adjust it and get it to do what they want it to do when they want it to do. 100% of those guys that I think can make their planters sing will try these things. Versus 1 out of 11 who tend to follow repairman. Then I was curious about how acres factor into this. And so acres per operator. So if there's 2 brothers, 4,000 acres is around 2,000. If they're 2,000 or less, I put them in this category. If there were more than 2,000 per operator, put them in that category. Yeah, flip the coin. So I don't think it really, because I hear that often. I have too many acres. I don't have time. Even the guys that tell me that, it doesn't show. Okay? The next guy has as many acres as just as, or more, and still is able to do it, because he has the time. Because he's not doing any tillage, so that gives him some time. So who cares? That's the interesting little data on my little data set. Is relevant, irrelevant, whatever. My point here is that when I'm trying to get strategies put together, I think I really need to start with the right rower. I think that's the first key. And you don't necessarily get that opportunity. But I'm trying to give you a few things. I think if you drive up on the yard and you see all green paint, and you ask them, well, how do you manage your soybeans? Well, your corn and soybeans, well, this is what I do. Do you ever try anything else? No? I mean, you're getting to somebody who's a little bit harder to convince to try something new. Right? Versus, you drive in the yard, there's a lot of stuff sitting around. There's different paint colors. He's in there building something. You might have an easier chance of getting that guy to try. This is just my observations, so take it for what they are. Soil test. I love the question here, how do I better measure those things? And I want to listen and find out what that is too. Because I'm doing the chemical analysis right now. That's the main thing I'm doing. The other thing I am doing though is when I'm soil probing, I'm kind of measuring the density arbitrarily. And I will tell you, it is so much nicer to probe in a hotel field. So much nicer. That's beyond the driving across the rough, nasty. And even when it's frozen, I don't think it's quite as hard, but I think it's more firm. Those are 2 different things. I think it relates directly to ag instability. Being able to drive on is one thing, being able to plant a seed in is another. And then one of the other opportunities, and this is something that you kind of have to work with the farmer and talk to them about. Okay, so, totally off in left field. Here's my mother-in-law's potato salad recipe. This has a point. This does have a point. So here we got the normal ingredients, potatoes, hard-boiled eggs, and then here you start to see where this recipe is going to go. Add 3/4 cup of steam, add sour cream, try 3/4 cup, you can add more later. Okay? Salt to taste. Sprinkle a little pepper over the top. Now the scientists in this room should be going, oh, what's the measurement? Right? Here we go, we'll go, little onion too. You know, whatever, just a little. Okay? This is my favorite. This is a direct quote, so any misspellings are hers. I don't claim them. This is a toughie. I never measure, just dump together. If it bites, use less vinegar or mustard. How do you use less after you put it in? That's my question. If you can taste sugar, use less. Again, same question. If it's blah, add more salt and or mustard or maybe sugar. And then she, honest to God, had this on the bottom for my wife. Good luck. Okay? So you can see that if my wife puts me in a room in a kitchen with this recipe and all the ingredients and it says good luck and leaves, it's not going to taste like Mom's potato salad. Okay? What is the point of Mom's potato salad? Point is, I think a lot of times when we give information in these types of talks, it's very generalized. Very generalized. There's no, and you get the question, well, what do I do on my farm? Well, it depends. That's the classic PhD answer, right? It depends and it's complicated. Okay? So I think really that's what happens to a lot of our farmers is they go to a meeting, they get really revved up, and they get really interested in whatever topic it is, and we give them Mom's potato salad recipe. And they go home, and they go, what am I supposed to do with this? Okay? How many am I going to make and try before I get it right? How much am I going to spend on this experiment before I get it right. I think we can do better than that. But I think it has to be on an individual basis, because if I sat in the kitchen with Mom and she showed me, I would be able to make this a little bit closer. Okay? So helping them specifically with a tailored plan. First thing is going to be soil test theory, and I'm just throwing out some random numbers here. Then the next thing is a specific crop for that guy. This is another field that I'm working on. We started with barley. We went into fall seeded rye. Okay? Next year, we're going to do oats and peas as a cover crop. Then the year after that, we're going to do sunflowers. This is what you're going to do. Okay? Do I expect great results with the oats and peas? Actually, yes. As I've seen after the spring rains, even though this is not really that good on salinity, these will grow much better. Still need to rain in the fall. Okay? In the absence of tillage causing more evaporation, the salts tend to go down on the surface. The oats and peas can grow. Once they get a little bit bigger, they grow a lot better. And this is helping with our soil health. This is not the wonderful, cool season, warm season, whatever, but you do see that I have cool season grass, fall season grass, other cool season. I have a legume, and I have a warm season broadleaf, getting a little bit closer. Okay? Weed control. This is a huge thing that needs to be planned for ahead of time. There was an experiment in Spearwood, North Dakota this year that on energy beets, very expensive. They tanked it because there was pursuit residue. They did not grow. 3 years ago, there was pursuit applied. Okay? So this has to be planned for ahead of time. So you have to get this producer into, instead of rape and pillage and plant every acre, spray every acre, they have to plan ahead with this goal. This is why my sunflowers are so far out, because I do have pursuit in the history of this. Okay. Taking a little bit of risk on the oats and peas, but they're kind of an easy crop anyway. I'm not going with turnips and radishes because he has the equipment to do this. That's the other point. He has the equipment on hand to do this. I'm not asking him to buy a piece, make a piece, build a piece. It's there. Okay? He's got to dig it out of the trees, but it's there. Okay? And then the residue plan. And I get this a lot, but all that residue. What am I going to do with all that residue? I went out to their farm and they manage a lot of residue. Number one, slow down. 9 miles an hour to the planter, it's going to bounce a little. Okay? Slow down. Adjust it. Learn how to make it sing. And this is really one of those things where we're trying to lose less money. So you have a little time to experiment. These are just some random final thoughts. I have a lot of time to myself in the soil sampling truck, so please don't hold this against me. I think agriculture is primarily learned through apprenticeship. A lot of students go to college, a lot of people get 4-year degrees, and they come home and they do what Dad tells them. They do what Dad did. They do what Grandpa did. They do what Great-Grandpa did. Oh yeah, we had herbicides because they were kind of nice, but yeah. That field's always been X or Y or whatever. Okay? We need to spark an interest in soils long before they hit college. Earth science should have more soils in it. I don't know, I can't do anything about that, but this is just something that I observe. Okay? And I think that a change in technique actually requires a new generation. I don't think you can turn it upside down. There's a few people, that 10% range, that will just do it. And those are the people that fit into all of my categories, and they just do it. Okay? They're willing to do it, they're the innovators, they're the leaders. But as far as the systems change, it takes a new generation that has already got a good foundation. And I think also when you give too many choices, you get no change. You don't know what to do. You give me Mom's potato salad recipe, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. Thank you. Now, tell me how wrong I am and how facetious that is and all of that. Any comments, observations? Did I hit some farmers? Do you know some of these people? Yes.
The guy that did all the tillage with the new soil, what did his neighbors do?
Yeah, lots of tillage around him. Lots of tillage around him. But that was previous. He's got a neighbor, this is a good story. He's got a neighbor that was disappointed in his corn yields this year. Okay, they were shooting for 200 bushel corn. We didn't get any rain for about 2.5 months. So he got him 110 bushel corn, 120 bushel corn. He was really furious. Okay? So they brought out the Barris machine. They did intensive soil sampling. They zoned everything. The guy's got his own variable rate spreader. And this grower called me, and he was saying, this guy's driving around. This is the 4th time he spread that field. I go, what? He says, I finally had to stop him and ask him what's he doing. He said, well, the first time they went out with 1152. I'm like, okay, it's fine. Second time they went out with potash. I'm like, why did they put those two together? Whatever. Third time he's running with lime. Okay? And that was when he got pulled over, because he's going and driving and nothing, and huge cloud of lime just flies out of the spreader. Looks like it snowed, and the grower's like, what is he doing? And he had to stop it. Okay? And he spread lime on, it was a quarter, and I think he said it was 1.3 acres. Drove the whole field and spread 1.3 acres. Okay, so that's that neighbor that I have that this guy watches and idolizes. Okay, he's like, should I be doing that? I'm like, no. just chill your conclusion. He's like, man, I think you're going to have roads out there. Yes, he is going to have roads out there. Yes, he's going to have problems. Yeah, my whole neighborhood, in the last 3 years, tillage is probably double or triple what it used to be. And I just feel like a total failure as a speaker. I've given a lot of speeches in that area. I talk against tillage regularly. I think the aggregates point to it. I think anybody who has an interest in soil health knows that tillage can be very destructive. And yet, it's like the biggest thing since sliced bread. And it's one of the oldest technologies we have. But it's fun because they get to do something, and they can look back and they can say, look at that. I did that. That's the answer he gave me, because they got a new tractor. Go ahead, John.
Lee, have you had any successes with getting them onto strip tillage, fall placement? Then they can see something happen, but it's not as terrible as what the chisel probably.
I'm not a fan of strip till. I'm not going to go there. I think one of the issues with strip till is that it's a shank machine, so that you can't get back on the same row. That's been my issue with strip tillage. Strip till, plant corn, nice. Strip till the same strip next year? No. Are you going to strip till on the corn rows? No, you really can't, not with a shank machine. So you move over. So what I have is what I already have, is every other year, every third year tillage. Okay, if you follow me with that. And so really I don't have no-till, I have a reduced tillage system. And what I have is a less effective reduced tillage system, because when they do conventional tillage across the field, at least it's uniform. So when they come back to plant it, they know what to expect, and it's easier to set your drill. I love strip tillage. I think it's one of the great ways to put down fertilizer, and I think that's as far as I'll go with it, in my area. But remember, people, I live in this little microcosm, and this is all I know. Okay? So it doesn't mean it's right, wrong, or indifferent. It just doesn't work around.
You're a breath of fresh air to me, because I find a lot of crop consultants who are also salesmen, and there's a conflict of interest as far as I'm concerned. They'll sell you a lot of things they don't need. One of the other areas I see a competition for doing the wrong thing is machinery salesmen who make a living selling tillage tools, and they have a newer, better tool that probably it's still tillage. Did you talk about them, or did you talk to those salesmen at all? To try
No, I don't bother with the salesmen because they know nothing about soils. And I have a picture, and I didn't put it up there. This is a picture from Argusville, and it says better soil through tillage, and it's got this whacked out field, and it's on the sign. Better soil through tillage. How asinine, pardon my French. Okay? It's just incredible. And so what happened with vertical tillage? We started with vertical tillage. It started out with a narrow, no angled disc, very little variegation, very shallow. We're talking about the super coulters and Selfords, and even the Selford has gotten a beefier, heavier duty, big version, you know. And so this is they're going with the vertical tillage and just doing it faster now, which sucks for me, okay? Because it's getting deeper, it's getting more aggressive. And I'll pick on the Butler Cat Joker. That's a disc, folks. That'll destroy aggregates in one pass. You got a guy come back with a second pass, he's now 6 inches deep. Been there, done that, seen it. And the thing's only 30 feet wide. That's the other fun part about it. 15 gallons an hour on fuel and you're 30 feet wide, you do the math, $5 to $7 an acre on fuel just to drive across and screw up your soil. Wow. This is what I'm getting at. I don't think the science alone will sell itself. Now, do I think my gimmicks help? Yeah. Are they enough? No. The neighbors, the real farmers that have been there, done that. You go, no, you don't need tillage. Why are you doing that? And we'll stand their ground. Because it's a peer pressure thing, too. And yes, I do not sell products. I'm very anti. I go with the things that make money and that I know about. I'm an NPK kind of guy. Buy good seed, do a good job. Do a good job planting. Do a good job of weed control. Do what you know makes you money. As far as the foo-foo juice, squirrel piss, whatever you want to call it, yeah. It comes and goes, right? New name, different dress. Same girl. If you've been there, dated her before, you don't need to do it again.
Well, Mr. Lee, really good presentation. At the end, I like the way you presented it. Every case is a special case. You know, you have to adjust. From an educational perspective, I know that I worked in farmers in Texas, and I mean these guys are even more conservative, especially in West Texas. When I came here, I found farmers really accepting of some new technologies, new methods, new management practices, and actually I like that. There's a lot of perception. So there was a big paper by Dr. Liebig about what is perception of farmers for different fertilizer, of the nutrient status of their soils, and they will like overestimate, underestimate some things. From the salinity perspective, did anybody do something like that? What are the farmers' perception of salinity? How they should do with it? I'm sure there's something that they learned that may not be correct. So before we teach them, maybe we should just go ahead and ask them all these questions and see what we can correct before we actually approach them with correction matters. What do you think about it?
No, I agree with you. I think you're onto something there. I don't know that there's been a specific study on it. Again, I'm in my little pigeonhole and I only see what I see. But I know that tillage is the most common thing that they use. And they use tillage for a number of reasons. It isn't just to get rid of the white, okay? It's to get weed control. You remember when I'm talking about, spraying around all these different crops, these different areas? We have drift issues as being a problem. Sometimes in these weeds, it's too late to apply the herbicide, it's damaging to apply a herbicide, it's not a smart thing to apply a herbicide to a large plant, okay? So they go in and they'll till this plant up. And I will say that I think tillage for weed control of large plants is only about 60% effective. Okay? I've tried to talk my growers into a batwing mower. It doesn't drift, it doesn't take a lot of fuel, it's small, it gets into little places and things like that. The perception is that tillage will help.
But who would like tell them, where would they get this perception from? Just from neighbors? Or?
It's that apprenticeship thing. It's back in the day. And a lot of guys will reference their dad talking about the early 80s, or late 80s, and our area was incredibly dry. And they'll say, that was the only place I got a crop. That's where the water is. Good. Okay? There's water there. And the other thing I think that farmers don't realize is that Hammerly, that Tonka, that Parnell, whatever it is underneath of that slough, is there, the soil is there because of the slough, not that the slough is there because of the soil. That's an important distinction. Okay? The soils are a factor of what forms them. Climate, living organisms, parent material, relief, and time. Okay? They think that the soil is holding the water. Actually, the soil is a result of the water being there. So if they can do something to the soil to make the water go through, that's part of the idea. And so I think the tillage is just a cultural thing. It's a recreational tillage. We've talked about that for years. Are there other things? What I find is that when I pick out that grower who isn't really brand loyal, who really isn't too worried about, he fits into my categories, he's much easier to convince to try it. Okay? And he's less judgmental on that first year failure. If you planted cover crops last fall, you were disappointed. It didn't grow. And a lot of farmers are like, well, that was a waste of money, I'm not going to do it again. Those are the guys that drive all John Deere equipment. This isn't necessarily specific, but they have a strategy, and this is how they're going to do it, and they're going to do it on every acre. And so you find that guy who's willing to look at it as an individual problem And I think that problem-solving thing is important to the creative mind. And what happens is that there's change by association. The sons will look and say, Dad, look at the neighbors. He had a bad salt spot there. It's getting better. They're not tilling it, they're planting barley. We didn't get anything out of the barley. Well, neither did we. And that's where I think this change needs to be a generational change. But we need to start working on this generation because we've been waiting for no-till to just roll. And for salinity management to roll, it's one of the first problems we talk about in soils. When I did my thesis, 1898. They're testing salinity. Why do we still have it?
Your slides there about the social, psychological influences seem to really resonate with others here. And you talk about a new generation. And I'm beginning to see now forms of social media where some of our really cutting-edge producers who really get it are utilizing that form of sort of information transfer. Do you think that's a way forward for us to be able to I guess, be more effective as I guess, stewards, I guess, which is all what we are very much.
I agree. I think absolutely. And there's new soil health videos that are, I think, on the web that relate to that. There's some new people doing things like that. There's new applications coming out of some of our universities that are cell phone based. I tried a Twitter account. Unfortunately, I'm in the wrong generation. Okay, I can't do it. I just can't do it. I tried. I made a concerted effort because I did. When I announced to my growers that I was going to do this and I was going to give you little updates, and if I saw a bug here or whatever, all of the under 30s added me quickly. Okay. Some of the other over 40s added a Twitter account, added me, and never followed it. And I did a poor job of following through. But I think you're onto something. But I think there's a caveat there. Web-based information is a glut of garbage in my mind. And I think that our general student and producer is not as keen of sorting through that garbage as we'd like them to be. And good fluffy pictures with different colors and the 1 bushel difference, and then take 1 bushel times $12 soybeans equals $12 gain and you spent $5, when it's a non-significant difference. It's not only common, it's rampant. And I will call out presenters in my meetings that don't have a statistically different. So I think yes and no. Got to be the right source, but then you got to be cool enough to be followed.
Sure. I suppose you're going to have to ferret out this fluff from the quality, but that's an actionable item that we might be able to do. I mean, to be able to identify those who have the scientific backing and support in the message that they're conveying. So
I agree. I think the best is one-on-one. It's been my best. One-on-one, identify that person, solve their problem.
Lee, this has been fantastic. We're getting right up on our break. Everyone, let's give Lee a